It was a typical Wednesday morning, and the news cycle was buzzing with the latest political drama. Karoline Leavitt, the rising conservative star, was scheduled to appear on Live Politics tonight for her regular segment. She was known for her sharp wit and fearless rhetoric, but today, something felt different. There was an undeniable tension in the air. The topic for the evening was Hollywood's growing involvement in political discourse, and no one's name sparked more controversy than Robert De Niro's. De Niro, the legendary actor turned vocal critic of the Trump administration, had recently made waves with a new anti-conservative statement. He had become a symbol of the liberal elite's disdain for the right, and Karoline was ready to take him on. Sitting behind the desk in her crisp blazer, Karoline smiled as the camera zoomed in on her. "Good evening, folks," she began, her voice calm, almost too calm. "Tonight, we're talking about the actors and entertainers who think their personal opinions are the truth. And if you've been paying attention, you know exactly who I'm talking about." Her eyes locked with the camera, and the audience went silent, hanging on her every word. "Robert De Niro," Karoline said, the name heavy with a mixture of disdain and amusement. "This man has spent decades playing tough guys, but when it comes to standing up for his so-called beliefs, he's nothing more than a scared little man in a Hollywood bubble." The audience erupted in quiet murmurs, and the host of the show, Mark Griffin, raised an eyebrow. "Karoline, don't hold back, will you?" he said with a smirk. She leaned forward, her tone growing sharper. "I'm sick of celebrities like De Niro trying to shove their liberal agenda down our throats. They use their fame to attack hard-working Americans who don't agree with them, and they think they can get away with it because they have a platform. But I'm here to tell you, those days are over." The camera cut to Mark, who was visibly amused by her boldness. "So, you're saying De Niro is out of touch with reality?" Karoline nodded, her eyes gleaming with determination. "Oh, absolutely. He's so out of touch, he might as well be living on another planet. But I'm not done. There's something else I need to say about him. And I think the world should hear it." The tension in the room was palpable as the audience leaned in. What could she possibly have to say next? Karoline paused for a moment, letting the silence hang in the air. The studio lights seemed to get brighter as everyone anticipated what would come next. She knew she had to deliver something that would not only shock her audience but also make a statement. "Let's talk about his recent comments," Karoline said, her voice dropping into a tone of mock sincerity. "De Niro called half of America a bunch of idiots just because we didn't fall in line with his liberal agenda." "Really, Robert? Is that how you view people who don't agree with you? As idiots?" Mark Griffin, the host, shifted uncomfortably in his seat, sensing where this was headed. "That's certainly a strong accusation. Do you think De Niro intended to insult the American people like that, or is it just part of the larger culture of Hollywood elitism?" Karoline's lips curled into a smirk. "Oh, I don't think it was accidental at all. Hollywood has become a breeding ground for people like him, out of touch, arrogant, and totally unaware of the struggles ordinary Americans face every day. De Niro doesn't care about the working class. He's far too busy being a part of the liberal echo chamber to even know what's going on in the real world." Her voice grew more intense as she delivered the next blow. "And you know what? His comments weren't just insulting. They were dangerous. They're the kind of divisive rhetoric that drives wedges between us. It's the kind of talk that leads to violence, hatred, and destruction of our shared sense of unity. And the worst part? He's not the only one doing it. But I'm calling him out right now." As the words left her lips, Karoline leaned forward, almost as if she was personally addressing De Niro himself. "I'm not afraid of you, Robert. You can try to bully us with your big, fancy Hollywood career, but at the end of the day, we're the ones who built this country. Not you. So take your insults and your arrogance, and keep them in your expensive little bubble. The rest of us? We'll keep working. We'll keep living. And we'll keep fighting for the values that made this nation great." The audience was absolutely silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Even Mark Griffin, usually quick to interject, was left speechless for a moment. The segment aired without incident, or so it seemed at first. Karoline's words hit social media like a bombshell. Within hours, clips of her takedown of Robert De Niro were trending, with millions of views, likes, and shares flooding in from all corners of the political spectrum. Some hailed her as a champion of the common people, while others slammed her for disrespecting a Hollywood icon. But the real drama was just beginning. That night, De Niro's response went viral, and it was far from what anyone had expected. It came in the form of a furious live interview with a prominent liberal TV host, who appeared eager to stir up controversy. Karoline Leavitt. "What a joke," De Niro sneered, his face twisted in anger. "Who the hell does she think she is, criticizing me on national TV like that? She's just another pawn in a sad game of political theater, using my name for her own gain." The camera cut to the host, who was grinning with satisfaction. "So, you don't think she has a point? She claims that you've been alienating half the country with your comments." De Niro's eyes narrowed as he fired back. "She doesn't know the first thing about what it's like to be in my shoes. She's a child, parroting what her party tells her. I've spent decades making art and trying to speak truth to power. If that makes me out of touch, then I'll gladly wear that label. But let me tell you something, what Karoline doesn't understand is that I've earned the right to say what I believe." The interview quickly spiraled into a shouting match. De Niro's voice grew louder, his face reddening. "She's a coward hiding behind a keyboard and a camera, and she wouldn't last 5 minutes in my world. She thinks she can just attack me on TV like that. Well, she's wrong. She has no idea what real consequences are." As De Niro continued to rant, the internet went wild. Clips of the interview exploded across Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. The hashtag De Niro vs. Leavitt became a trending topic almost immediately, with people weighing in from all sides. But then came the twist that no one saw coming. As the interview reached its peak, a breaking news alert flashed across TV screens around the world. It was a statement from De Niro's own management team, apologizing for his outburst, calling it uncharacteristic and inappropriate. The apology cited his stress and emotional reaction to Karoline's comments. The backlash against De Niro was swift. His fans were torn, with some denouncing him for backing down while others claimed the apology was a necessary step. But for Karoline, the victory was clear. On her Twitter, she posted a simple message: "When you can't win the argument, you apologize. #sorry not sorry." The response was immediate. Her followers surged, her approval ratings spiked, and conservative pundits began calling her the face of reason in the culture wars. But as Karoline sat back in her office that night, scrolling through the flood of messages and media attention, she knew this was far from over. The next move would be De Niro's, and she was ready for whatever came next. The dust hadn't even settled from De Niro's public apology when the next round of this heated battle began. Karoline's message had cut deep into the Hollywood elite, and they were not about to let her have the last word without a fight. The media buzz around the De Niro apology was intense, but that wasn't the end of the story. In fact, it was just the beginning of a much larger spectacle. Late the next evening, a cryptic video appeared on social media. It was short, only about 30 seconds, but the message was loud and clear. The video began with a close-up of Robert De Niro, looking more composed than before, though his eyes were still sharp, his tone still tinged with anger. "Karoline, you want to talk about real consequences? Well, you've got it," De Niro said, his voice low and dangerous. "You think you can tear someone down and walk away unscathed? You're wrong. I don't take kindly to being used as a political prop for ratings." The video cut to black, and then words flashed across the screen, #the real De Niro. The clip ended, leaving behind an eerie silence. Almost immediately, the media erupted. Fans and critics alike started speculating. Was this a warning? A threat? Or just another part of the game? It was clear that De Niro wasn't done with Karoline, and his refusal to let her have the final word only fueled the flames. On Live Politics Tonight, Karoline was ready. She was prepared for whatever De Niro threw at her next. The phone lines were open, and as usual, the political audience was split. Some of her conservative supporters demanded that she take him down once and for all, while others were skeptical, wondering whether De Niro's latest move was simply a setup to make her look like the villain. "I have a message for Robert De Niro," Karoline said, looking directly into the camera, her voice steady. "You think an apology and a cryptic video will scare me? You think a few angry words are enough to shut me up? Let me tell you something, Robert. I'm not here for a game. I'm here to speak the truth. The truth that you, and your Hollywood cronies, can't handle." Her eyes narrowed, a fire burning behind them. "You want to talk consequences? Fine. Let's talk about the consequences of your actions. You've spent decades playing characters in movies, but here's the truth, Robert, you're not the tough guy you pretend to be. You're just another actor, someone who hides behind a screen and shouts from the comfort of your multi-million-dollar mansion." The crowd in the studio responded with a cheer, but Karoline wasn't done. "Your so-called apology wasn't sincere, it was a damage control move. You can't fool the American people with your Hollywood tricks anymore. You've shown us who you really are. And the real Robert De Niro is just a washed-up celebrity trying to make himself relevant again by bashing hardworking Americans." As the audience erupted into applause, Karoline stood tall. She knew this was more than just a personal vendetta, it was a battle for the future of the culture war. And she was going to win. The tension between Karoline Leavitt and Robert De Niro reached a fever pitch as the days passed. It wasn't just a political fight anymore, it had become a full-blown media circus. The world was watching, waiting for the next move. And as expected, De Niro's camp wasn't going to back down quietly. The next morning, news outlets reported that De Niro had scheduled an exclusive appearance on a primetime cable show, The Late Night Review, where he was expected to respond to Karoline's latest salvo. The timing was deliberate. He had chosen the show for its massive liberal viewership, hoping to counter the narrative that Karoline had spun so effectively. The stakes were high, and it was clear that both sides were preparing for a monumental showdown. That evening, Karoline appeared on her usual spot on Live Politics Tonight, but she wasn't alone. A surprise guest had been arranged, a renowned political analyst known for his insight into the workings of Hollywood's influence on politics. Karoline smiled as he took his seat beside her. "Tonight, we're not just talking about words. We're talking about power, the power Hollywood has to shape narratives, to manipulate opinions, and to push an agenda," she began, looking directly at the camera. "And Robert De Niro? He's a master of that manipulation. He's been using his fame as a weapon to divide us." The guest, Professor William Davenport, leaned forward. "You're absolutely right, Karoline. De Niro is an example of what I call the celebrity complex, where fame gives you an inflated sense of power, making you think you can control the narrative just by speaking out. But here's the thing, it's starting to backfire. The more he engages, the more people see him for what he really is, an actor, not a politician." Karoline's eyes gleamed with satisfaction as she addressed the camera. "Exactly. Robert De Niro may have a long list of accolades, but it doesn't give him the right to speak for the rest of us. And it certainly doesn't give him the right to lecture hard-working Americans on how to think, how to vote, or what they should believe. He's nothing more than a mouthpiece for the Hollywood elite." Just as Karoline finished her statement, the live feed flashed an alert: De Niro's appearance on the Late Night Review was about to begin. Across town, De Niro sat backstage, steeling himself for the inevitable confrontation. His publicist had warned him that this would be his opportunity to set the record straight. "You can't let her get away with calling you a has-been," his manager had said. "You've got to show that you're not afraid to fight back." The host of the Late Night Review greeted him with a handshake, but it was clear there was a sense of anticipation in the air. The crowd was ready, eager for De Niro to lay out his thoughts and, perhaps, escalate the feud with Karoline once and for all. Robert, the host began, last week, you made some waves with your comments about Karoline Leavitt. She fired back with a scathing critique of you, calling your apology weak and insincere. How do you respond? De Niro took a deep breath, his usual calm replaced by a palpable tension. Look, I've spent my life in the public eye. People like Karoline, they want to make a name for themselves by using me as a punching bag. But I'm not just going to stand here and take it. She's a political puppet, no more, no less. And what she's doing is dangerous. She's part of a larger movement that seeks to divide this country, to pit us against each other. The host raised an eyebrow. But don't you think you're part of that same machine, Robert? You're a Hollywood elite with millions of dollars. Isn't that a bit of an us versus them narrative from your side, too? De Niro's expression hardened. Maybe I'm an elite in the eyes of some, but I'm also someone who's spent decades giving people the truth. I've dedicated my life to art, to challenging the status quo. And I'll continue to do so, no matter how many Karoline Leavitts try to tear me down. The audience was silent as De Niro's words echoed in the studio. But Karoline wasn't one to back down, and she had already prepared for this moment. That night, as the late-night review aired, Karoline made a decisive move. She tweeted, Robert De Niro may have spent decades in front of the camera, but it's time for him to face reality. You can't fight for the truth when you're living in a bubble. #TimeForChange, the tweet was instantly shared millions of times. The battle had escalated beyond anyone's expectations, and De Niro's comments only added fuel to the fire. The stage was set for a dramatic final confrontation. The air felt charged. The back and forth between Karoline Leavitt and Robert De Niro had reached an unprecedented level. What had started as a simple political clash had transformed into something much larger, a full-scale culture war. The nation was divided, and the world was watching, waiting for the final word. It was the night before the highly anticipated prime-time debate, an event that had been scheduled as a special broadcast to settle the score between Karoline and De Niro. Both sides had been preparing for weeks, and the tension could be felt in every corner of the media. Karoline, now firmly entrenched as a conservative hero, was determined to bring the debate to her turf. This isn't just about me and De Niro, she said in an exclusive interview with Fox News. It's about the people who are fed up with being lectured by the elites. It's about the silent majority who are tired of being told they're wrong just because we don't agree with Hollywood's agenda. De Niro, on the other hand, was preparing for a fight of his own. In private meetings with his team, he was furious about the way things had spiraled. I'm done playing nice, he muttered. Tomorrow, I show her who's really in control. The night of the debate finally arrived. The studio was packed, the cameras were rolling, and both Karoline and De Niro were sitting in their respective chairs, waiting for the moderators to introduce the first round of questions. There was an electric energy in the air, the kind that only a true showdown could generate. The debate began with a question about the role of Hollywood in shaping political discourse. Mr. De Niro, the moderator began, you've been a vocal critic of the conservative movement, especially figures like Karoline Leavitt. Do you believe celebrities should use their platform to speak out on political matters? De Niro took a deep breath. Absolutely, he said, his voice calm but laced with passion. Artists, actors, musicians, they've always been the ones to challenge the status quo. We're the ones who speak the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. And if that makes some people angry, so be it. The truth hurts. Karoline's turn to speak came swiftly. With all due respect, Mr. De Niro, the truth is not exclusive to Hollywood. In fact, it's hard to call your rhetoric the truth, when it's rooted in elitism and out-of-touch ideologies. You're right, you've spent your life speaking out, but you've done so from a place of privilege. You've never had to worry about paying your bills, about losing your job, or about what's happening to the country outside of your bubble. The room grew tense, and De Niro's expression hardened. That's easy for you to say, Karoline, when you're standing there in your polished suit, speaking to an audience of your own. But just because I've had success in my career doesn't mean I don't understand the struggles people face. I've fought my own battles. And when I speak, I do it for the people who don't have a voice, for the ones who are silenced by people like you." Karoline's eyes sparkled with determination. "Don't you dare try to spin this as if you're some kind of champion for the common man. You don't speak for us. You speak for yourself and your millionaire friends. You're not interested in solving real problems. You're interested in maintaining the power that Hollywood has over the narrative." The debate continued, each side throwing verbal punches in what had quickly become a verbal brawl. The audience was on the edge of their seats, captivated by the ferocity of the exchange. But then, midway through the debate, something unexpected happened. Karoline paused for a moment, her voice dropping to a more serious, almost somber tone. "Robert," she said, addressing him directly, "you and I might never agree on politics. That's fine. But the truth is, what you're doing right now, this constant divisiveness, it's tearing us apart. It's not about left versus right anymore, it's about something deeper. And I'm tired of seeing this country destroyed by petty bickering. If you really care about America, if you really care about the people, maybe it's time we start listening to each other instead of shouting over one another." The room was silent. De Niro, caught off guard by her shift in tone, was left momentarily speechless. For a fleeting second, it felt like the world had stopped. The audience waited, hanging on every word. But then De Niro took a deep breath and shook his head. "It's not that simple, Karoline. You can't just pretend that everything will magically get better if we all hold hands and sing Kumbaya. People like you and me, we have a responsibility to make the hard choices, to speak out when things are wrong. And I won't back down from that. I won't stop fighting for what I believe in, no matter how much people like you try to tear it down." As the debate raged on, it became clear, this was no longer just about politics. It was about the future of America, and both Karoline and De Niro were locked in a battle for the soul of the nation. The final moments of the debate were nearing. The air in the studio was thick with tension. The clock was ticking down, and both Karoline and Robert De Niro had made their points, but there was a lingering sense that the true winner had yet to be determined. The moderators called for the final statements, and the floor was given to Karoline first. She took a deep breath and stood up, her posture straight and confident. The audience held its collective breath as she began speaking, her voice cutting through the silence. "Tonight, we've witnessed something important. Not just a political debate, but a confrontation of values. Robert, you stand for a Hollywood elite that uses their platform to manipulate the masses, to push an agenda that only serves the powerful. You talk about the truth, but the truth is that you're out of touch. You've made a career out of playing characters, but when it comes to the real world, you've lost sight of what truly matters. You think your fame gives you the right to divide us, to tear this country apart with your rhetoric." She paused, looking directly at De Niro, her gaze unwavering. "But here's the truth, Robert. The people, regular, everyday Americans, are fed up. We don't need you telling us what to believe. We don't need your insults, your elitism. What we need is unity. What we need is a government that listens to us, that fights for our families, our jobs, and our way of life. And as long as I'm standing, I'm going to keep fighting for those people. No Hollywood actor, no matter how many Oscars they've won, can take that away from me." The audience erupted into applause. Karoline's words hit hard, and her final message resonated deeply with those who had been watching. De Niro, his face a mask of resolve, stood up for his final statement. He wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. "Karoline, you've made a lot of noise tonight. You've used your platform to twist my words and paint me as the enemy. But let me make this clear, I'm not the one dividing this country. I've spent my life using art to speak the truth, to challenge power, and to stand up for the voiceless. I didn't choose this fight, but I'm not afraid of it. And if you think you can win by pitting us against each other, you've got another thing coming." His voice grew sharper. "You might call it elitism. I call it responsibility. The responsibility of using whatever platform I have to call out injustice when I see it. And that's something I will never apologize for." The room was silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air. As the debate came to a close, the moderators gave the final word. The audience, still buzzing with energy, began to murmur their thoughts. But for Karoline, the battle was already over in her mind. She had said what needed to be said. She had exposed Niro for what he was, an actor with no real understanding of the struggles faced by everyday Americans. As the camera faded to black, Karoline took a moment to collect herself. She wasn't sure what would happen next. She knew there would be backlash, more media coverage, and probably more attacks from Hollywood's elite. But tonight, she had won. The aftermath was just as explosive as the debate itself. News outlets were flooded with opinions, analysis, and hot takes from both sides. Karoline's followers praised her for standing strong and sticking to her principles. The hashtag Leavitt wins trended nationwide. But De Niro's supporters weren't quiet either. Many in Hollywood rallied behind him, calling Karoline a political pawn and claiming that De Niro had been slandered by a media-driven witch hunt. Yet, in the weeks that followed, it became clear that Karoline had achieved something far more important than any debate victory. She had cemented herself as a force to be reckoned with in the political arena. Her rise wasn't just about taking on De Niro, it was about taking on an entire culture of elitism and self-righteousness that had taken root in American politics. Her next moves were already in the works. She wasn't just going to be a talking head on a cable news show. She had bigger plans. Karoline Leavitt had just become the new face of the conservative movement, and she wasn't going anywhere.